Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm your host, Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Yann Novak, fellow member of Monte Vista Projects. What are your main, do you define as interdisciplinary? Like, what's your PR branding?
I refer to myself as artist and composer at this point.
Okay.
So even though, all of my art has sound, it just makes more sense that way.
Okay. And how long have you been in Monte Vista? When did you guys get in? Because we weren't there that much longer than you guys.
Yeah.
Like, we were in September and you guys were when?
I think it was like April, maybe.
April. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's a considerable amount of time, but like we just needed new blood. I mean, That's kind of how it was when we got in. It was like, did you ever hear about the fact that we may have been shutting down?
Deborah alluded to it in a meeting once, but okay. I didn't get the full details.
No, it was fine. It was like one meeting. It was proposed because she was leaving, and then we were like, no way. Like no one was happy with that idea.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, man. So how are you finding the organization? I mean, you've come into you slotted yourself into a pretty solid role. I used to be part of the finance committee, but I just ended up being too busy. And it seems like who is it? It's you, Carly, and.
There hasn't been much movement on the fundraising.
Okay,
yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it's not. I didn't just end up flaking out of that.
Not at all. No,
No. It's all of it. There's a bunch of us. We don't have to list everyone. At least we admit that we're complicit in it not happening.
Yeah.
But
I totally dropped the ball on a couple aspirational grants I wanted us to apply for, and. It just got away from me. So I'm still finding my figuring out how much capacity I have to do it.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot and make you excuse yourself. Like I was just saying it in the context that it was exciting because you have a nice energy about you. Yeah. And I think that people want to know basically being part of Monte Vista is mostly being part of a group chat, which I don't think, and then going to socialize and then and then we get assigned different tasks. Like I am also flaking on my task, which is to throw the party that between us and TSA LA, we're going to have a social. It's just to give people an idea of how crazy it is. It's really like a bunch of people that have schedules, and then we just try to keep the space going.
Yeah, totally.
We're not hanging out at people's houses every day. Although it maybe that's kind of because I've dropped the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, to me, I'm already at the point of being oh my God, why did I propose 2 shows this year?
Yeah.
Oh my God, now I have to
No, but you know why you proposed 2 shows? So that I have to propose 2 shows. Yeah. I immediately was like, yo, I need to meet with this person and this person.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, in fact, I interviewed someone and I was looking at the work and I was like, in the middle of the interview, I was like, do you want to pitch a show to Monte Vista? I mean, they'll have to vote on it, but you know. But yeah, so basically for people that don't know, what we do is we are all curators and we all have our own practice, but we don't show in the space, although we cheated one time and we all hate it. Yeah. And no one promoted it. We were we've got a 2-week dead period and it was our shame.
Yeah.
I'll probably even cut this part out. But yeah, so, okay, let's get a little bit of background about you. So we were talking a little bit before about your mainstay, we talk about how we're working class artists on this show. You are a web developer, right?
Yes, yeah.
And can I give the hot tip that you gave me that Squarespace is not as good as WordPress?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am especially for artists. I think Squarespace is the absolute worst thing you can do for your practice.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, you told me already off air, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but there are other reasons too. I mean, it's one of the simple one is that you're leasing the design versus owning the design. So it's with a WordPress site, you can move it around, you can take it wherever you want. If you want to leave the Squarespace ecosystem,
it becomes expensive. You were saying.
Exactly. Yeah, if you get it priced out or whatever, it's you're screwed. can barely get your content out of it. You know, it's like you basically will have to start over somewhere from scratch.
Yeah.
And WordPress, because it's open source, is designed to, if you want to move your site to Tumblr, if you want to like, you know, do whatever, it's like there are plugins out there that will let you transition it to wherever you want. So you're building a database that can go with you for years to come.
Yeah. As I'm thinking about it, though, I'm also realizing that most of the people I have on the show never update their websites. What kind of clients do you have? Like, is it artists ever, or is
yeah. It's artists, musicians, record labels, art organizations. So I've done everything from like, you know, small artists, small musicians, because I do like WordPress consulting work where I can like throw together a website for like $500 for, you know, so I try and do both that, and then I do really high-end stuff for like, you know, I did like Smack Melon, the art space in New York. I did their website. You know,
what are the I mean, because I'm asking you because you are informed on this stuff.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
and most people, like, I think I think the reason that most of the artists that I have on the show probably don't update their website, they mostly stick to Instagram, which falls under the same problem that we were talking about. And like now their content is not even getting to the people that follow them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a case to be made for actually updating your website. What are the benefits? Like, why do these artists, what is it that they get out of, why do they come to you to have a website designed? Say for that $500 package, what do they feel like they get out of it, and what do you sell them on?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about owning your space on the internet and being able to maintain it yourself. So a big part of it, a part of that consulting stuff for those smaller clients as well is training and, you know, teaching them how to use it and updating it accessible. Because that's one of the things with like, you know, the other aspect of like Squarespace that I find terrible is like that you're both the designer and the populator of the website. You know what I mean? Like you have to,
I get what you're saying.
You
have to choose even though the templates are already there, you have to customize them to fit your needs and whatnot. Yeah.
Exactly. And with the, you know, the sites I do, it's like all of that stuff is like kind of boiled in. So it's like you're just dropping in images into image slots, dropping text into text slots, and it all looks right. For the user.
That's what you design.
Yeah, and you know, that's
not just WordPress. Like you can't use like the interface of WordPress isn't the same as Squarespace.
Yeah,
it's not as accessible. That's where you come in.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, do you want to, since we'll make it a nice tidy package, do you want to pitch your website so that people know?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically
or plug it, not pitch it.
Yeah, I mean that's the you know, I do 2 packages. I do consulting work, which is on an hourly rate. So it's like artists can come and like, if they can only afford to pay me 3 hours a month, you know, we'll take 5 months to do it, and it'll all live on my server, and they can work on it there until they're ready to launch it. You know, so I have that really flexible thing. I also do, you know, for galleries or, you know, more established artists, I do bigger projects where it's like I design the entire thing from the ground up, where it's like a 3-month commitment of like, you know, doing design research on, you know, what they do. And, you know, in those instances, it's for a little more established artists, it's really about, I become kind of I like to think of myself as like a framer. Okay. You know what I mean? Where it's like, where I'm not only there to put something on the internet, but it's me helping them figure out the best way to organize their work, to display their work, and then designing something that complements their work. So it's like, you know.
So you don't just have a template that you throw stuff into.
No.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, because basically that's the disadvantage of Squarespace.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the other thing. It's like, and coming from, my partner is an artist, but also like an arts administrator. So I've seen a lot of the, like, you know, and then even in Monte Vista, we're, you know, in some way we're art administrators, you know, and it's like
me in the least way.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about
I'm the face. I show up to the openings.
Yeah. So, but we're doing we can plug the open call that we have open through February 5th,
Oh yeah, for sure.
I
said I was going to do it on the podcast, but I haven't gotten around
Yeah.
to filming a thing. Maybe at the end of this, we'll do one.
Yeah. But yeah, so we, it's like, we're going to go through, probably 100, applications, and we'll probably click on their websites, and if like every other one of them looks the same because it's using the same template in
Squarespace,
in Squarespace, and it's like so much of the art world is, so much of you're using your website is for things like that, for applying for grants, stuff like that, where the opportunity arises for the person viewing to see that template used over and over again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like
that's a good point.
Yeah, it's
I can see how there isn't if you have the budget for it.
Yeah.
It is a beneficial investment.
Yeah, and then now if you think about like what's happening with Twitter too, like, with Elon Musk turning it into a hellscape, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's going to be a real push towards people wanting to have, take control and have ownership over their presence on the web again. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of my hope of that shit show, is that it will push people back towards having websites, because that's what was great about the internet 20 years ago. It was like all these random websites that like, anyone could put up something. It would just be the most random shit, but it was like so charming. And
but it was also a lot less regulated than it is now. So I mean, it's like, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of billionaires, but to me, the whole thing, the hyperbole around everything right now is just so intense. Like, like it's so funny how everything is bigger than, like, essentially, I don't know, like whatever hope we have for the internet, it's so different than whatever it was. And like, because I mean, we're of the generation, we talked off air that we're about the same age.
Yeah.
And the internet was crazy. Like, do you remember the term information superhighway?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, do people even know what that is anymore? Like, that is so crazy to me. It is a wild, wild time to like live through from zero to, and I don't know. Maybe it's just inevitable that things like that get corrupted. But I think you can trace back all the stuff like the Ajit Pai on the I don't even know what it's called anymore. Net neutrality. Like, it's such an old concept. That was like what? How many years ago? That was like 20 early 2000s, right?
Yeah, early 2000s. Yeah. And then it came up again like 2015 or something, or say there was.
I think because I don't know.
No, it was during Trump, because the
Ajit Pai was during Trump, possibly.
Yeah.
I you know what? Life is a blur.
Yeah.
Either way, that whole thing of just like the selling, the commercialization, and the Anyway, so what was your topic?
Oh, so I went around this. I thought the best thing to do would be science fiction.
Okay, cool. All right, I think we're on the same wavelength then.
Awesome.
Who's your favorite? I mean, or I can just tell you who my favorite is. Go ahead.
I would say.
Do you have a genre that's favorite? Do you have a particular writer that you like a lot?
For me, it would be James S.A. Corey.
Not familiar.
Who wrote the Expanse novels?
Oh, which is the TV show?
They later turned it into a TV show, which I think the TV show is a one of the best adaptations. But the books, I think, are just
It kind of has a Battlestar Galactica vibe to it. I feel like you know, like from the outside, having never watched it, but just like, space characters that are in love with each other.
Yeah, I mean,
that are soldiers and in love.
A term that I recently learned, which I am in love with, is the term Ambitopian.
Okay.
And actually, both of those would fall into that genre.
Okay, what's that?
It's an author.
It's like ambidextrous of dystopian and utopian.
Yeah, exactly.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
I'm not that dumb.
Yeah. So this author, Redfin John Barrett, kind of coined the term, and it was specifically talking about these things. I think both Battlestar Galactica and The Expanse are great examples of it. Of looking to the future, seeing things in some things are seen in a very utopian light, but there are also real world problems that we're dealing with today that have, carried over or we're seeing the evolution of. So it kind of gives a more realistic
I don't know if I would say that Battlestar Galactica is not dystopian. All of society goes off on three boats. But I get the hopeful, I get it's the Ark story, right?
Yeah,
Noah's Ark. Okay, I get you. I worked through the whole process, and I'm with you now.
Yeah, The Expanse is pushes it much farther.
Much farther.
Yeah,
okay.
It's rooted in much more hard science, which is something I really enjoy when science fiction writers do. So it's like,
but you don't do strictly hard sci-fi.
No, I'll go for all of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I just the Expanse allows you to kind of put yourself into it a little bit more, which I really love. Like just the idea of especially in the books, they obviously for TV they can't do it, but it all happens, for the most part in our solar system. And it's they'll have to get from point A to point B and it will take 8 days.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So there are these and there's this, these kind of families are created on ships, and there's all this stuff that they do.
I think I nailed the synopsis.
yeah, nerdy, kind of physics stuff where it's there's not, there's no anti-gravity. It's they're either on the float or they're using acceleration gravity,
like the centrifugal. Or what's acceleration?
Constant acceleration will create will pull you back. So all the ships in the series are designed
to keep continuously moving like a shark.
But also they're top down. So it's they're built like a skyscraper.
Okay.
So it's when they're going forward, the floor is, the bottom is the floor.
This sounds like it's better than Star Wars, because Star Wars ends up kind of sucking at some point. I'm into it. Did you so when you said sci-fi, that's such a broad genre too,
it is,
right? So now that this is exciting because I didn't tell you who my favorite sci-fi author was. Yeah, sure. I was going for more the Snow Crash, what's his name? Neil Stephenson, who also does the historical fiction, which I really enjoy.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting, how broad of a genre it is. I'm excited, and I'm always looking for new recommendations. It does sound a little bit like The Foundation, which the TV show was terrible, but the Asimov. Have you ever read any of that?
I'm actually currently I'm reading what is it I forget which one I'm reading now, but for the first time I'm reading those now. I think I'm on the
not an easy read.
Book.
Yeah, it's not an easy read because you keep having to you keep being introduced to new characters.
Yeah,
which is a little tedious. But I mean, story wise, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, it's for me. It's I've been really enjoying it, and I did make the jump from the 50s stuff to the 80s stuff. So the one I'm on now is the first book that he wrote in the 80s.
Yeah.
The 50s stuff was. I got a little cringy towards the end of, because I feel like going back to the Ambitopian thing, it was like Ambitopian of the 50s, where it was every the Foundation is constantly trying to reinvent how they're expanding, and it somehow always boils down to making their women happy. Which is the first iteration, they're oh, we can sell them these trinkets and jewels, and there's this whole paragraph I remember reading where it was all about financial control of these barbarized worlds through basically giving them appliances And then it's like, oh, the refusal to fix the appliances will, the women will nag the men so much that they'll
Which
have
book
to...
is this? I don't think I got that deep.
Yeah, I think it was it was the second book. It was the second book. Yeah, it was full on, like the kind of first iteration is they kind of use religion. They like introduce.
So then I guess so sci-fi for you, what are the parameters that you're most like? It sounds, because I'm from a generation of the William Gibson stuff, like, I mean, we both are, obviously, but I got more into that stuff, and it was actually really influential in terms of, like, I can trace specific pieces to, like, William Gibson concepts of data collection before it even happened, or while it was starting to really take off, but I think some of that stuff was written in the 80s, where it was like data trees, and I would try to visualize data trees of like your personhood as boiled down to, and it's an interesting thing. It's that stuff was really interesting as a teenager and as a man in his 20s to sort of think of the many selves, like you have your person, like your personhood. And in fact, sometimes, like, especially during COVID, sometimes I get so into the tech space that I like have like that natural processes seem weird, like sex, where it's like, oh my God, I'm attracted to this person's body, where it's like we live in such a sterile, unbiological like lifestyle, as opposed to like maybe even when we were kids. Like when we were kids, it was dirty, like you would scrape your knee and shit. Yeah, like even kids nowadays don't do that. Yeah,
for me, that I have the opposite, where I get so into the tech space that I kind of forget my body.
Yeah.
So I can trace that back all the way to my 20s of like having these moments, like when I was living in Seattle, of like starting a project on my computer, in the middle of the afternoon or something. And in the winter in Seattle, it gets dark really early, like at 4:00. And like blinking and it being dark.
Yeah.
Like where the outer periphery of my perception is not refreshing. And then all of a sudden I have a certain blink and it's like, I'm like, what happened? Like it's this weird perceptual shift. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah. No, it is that, like, we used to call it the K-hole.
Yeah.
Back, I think that's a generational thing, when you were in the hole.
Yeah.
But yeah. So okay. So and then I'm sorry. The sci-fi that you're into, is space always involved in your sci-fi, or because I mean sometimes it is for me, but that like I've always been more into like futures.
For me it would be futures as well.
So not alien sci-fi, not like I mean Contact is cool and all, but like.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, but like that's the end of like, as far as I get into the alien stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I like alien abduction stories and all of that, like the real stuff, but like alien sci-fi is always a little bit like, unless it's like Star Trek.
Yeah. It all depends for me. I have a total soft spot for Star Trek and the full on. I'm forgetting his name. Whoever created Star Trek.
Oh yeah. Well, now I'm blanking.
Gene Roddenberry. Like I'm all for that. Like hardcore utopian as well. Like I think it's absolutely beautiful, and using aliens as a kind of metaphor for diversity is like, I'm all for it. So it really depends. Like alien stuff won't necessarily lose me, but I don't. I'm not going to necessarily, like, I also won't
seek it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think we're on the same page. So then, have you ever read Snow Crash or anything like that?
I haven't.
Okay, because that is hard dystopian. That's like anarcho-capitalist stuff, which is really interesting. I think a lot of the it's one of those books that I read and I was like, oh, it's cool. But then like a lot of other people read it and they're like, oh, we should make it real. And I'm like, no, it's not cool like that. Because like Meta literally comes, like Facebook, the biggest company in the world is named after a concept that comes from that book, right? And so, but there's some really interesting stuff that he does, which is like he talks. He's have you read any Tom Robbins?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Tom Robbins is great, but sometimes his research is bigger than the story and more interesting than the story. And I don't find that is the case with like I'm always fascinated with the holes that he goes down. And so there it's about hackers, right? And it's about like there's like a virus that people can get, and he traces the histories of viruses and all of these little things, and it's both metaphorical and like but it's basically like there is a virus that's only affecting hackers because only they can read or understand the code that is being flashed in front of their face. But it's really cool stuff. And then it basically is like what our country is kind of heading towards, which is everything is privatized. There's not even a police anymore in that world. It's like just a completely, it's the anarcho-capitalist dream of like just complete corruption. Everything is privatized. You are a citizen of McDonald's as opposed to a citizen of America. The American government is tiny. It's crazy.
That's that.
But I think like Peter Thiel and those motherfuckers.
The Expanse does the exact same, or does very similar things with that, where it's like the world that exists there is like Earth is a sovereign nation, Mars is a sovereign nation, and everyone that inhabits and works in the belt, the outer planets, are basically the lower class, and they are, because of generationally being raised in space, they can no longer inhabit a gravity well. So they've kind of become another race, but not really. But like they, so it's really interesting where they will, like the stations that they live on will be run by a corporation versus, it's like they're not, because they're not part of,
okay. So, yeah.
So it's like this, Tycho station is run by the Tycho Corporation, and, they have their own, and so the first book is kind of like a detective novel, which is really beautiful. And so one of the main characters is a security guard on a station. And so, but there's like this great line about how, we don't, because it's a station, we don't have police, we just have security.
Yeah.
It's like they're just, so it's like safety is all about the safety of the corporation, not about the people.
No, definitely. Yeah. And one of the things that's funny it's like going to an embassy. Like when like it's not McDonald's, it's like Lee's Happy something, whatever. But like it's you that's where you go to run away from the private security. Once you get into your franchise, the private security can no longer chase you because you've got sovereignty. It's like like I said, stepping into your embassy. All that stuff is cool and interesting because it's like it's based on a lot of like. It's just based on a lot of history, right? Like company towns is what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like where and then they pay you in the money that you can only use there, and they end up collecting all of it because you owe rent, and they control how much rent. So like literally you just get, it's that fractal nature of like of history repeating itself, right? Like it's not the first time it happened in the 50s. It wasn't the first time then, and it won't be the first time in the future.
Yeah. And so like in The Expanse, they, it's all about, and it goes back to like, it's very similar to like Dune, where it's like, it's all about resources.
Yeah.
Where it's like in Dune, it's all about spice.
And water.
And water, and in The Expanse, it's water and oxygen.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
because those are the.
So are there pirates in space?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, it only makes sense.
Yeah,
and there's a market for it.
Yeah, and but they do it in such a detailed, great way. So there's this whole like little subplot. It's basically like the backstory of one character, but it's like. He, was like I won't go into it, but the what I'm going for is like these belters on a station, the corporation that sells them everything ups the prices, you know, like a penny, you know, for their oxygen. And, you know,
and it throws everything.
Yeah. In that context, it means that in order for them, the amount of oxygen that they can afford per month is 2 days short of what they need, you know, but when it's oxygen, it like, you know, it's like, and it's out, but you know, it goes right back to like Nestle trying to privatize water. You know what I mean? It's like, it's already happening here now.
Have you seen there's one of the solutions that people came up with in some region, I forget. It could also be bullshit because I saw it on one of those motivational Instagram things. But they put out these big, like, I don't know what they're made out of, but like sails that kind of just captured moisture from night. I don't know. I mean, it looks like desert, so I don't know how much moisture there is, but. It's interesting how like people come up like necessity is the mother of invention kind of thing. Yeah. But I mean, not that I'm happy that they have to do it. It's awful. But yeah, I mean, they've been doing that for like since we were kids, you know? And that's the crazy thing. Like I think people may have been more aware on a global scale of like the horrors of like our economy and what we did, whereas like even though we have all this access to information, I don't think people really realize, like, you know, it's like how bad everything that I'm running in this in this setup, like your setup, like all of this stuff is like made out of very, very bad metals that are like artisanally taken. And I just think people are so disconnected from that. It's crazy, you know? But I think that that's what the literature that we like makes you aware of, like that disconnect. And growing up with it made me now makes me feel like as dystopian as the world is, I can kind of survive it because all the characters I read about were badasses. You know, YT had a harpoon and a skateboard, and stuff like that. What did you ever read? You mentioned detective novels. Did you ever read Asimov's I, Robot, the original one?
I haven't yet. That's
like where all cliches come from. Yeah. Like you will read it and be like, "Oh, I've read this story before," because everything has copied it. Yeah.
I'm planning on it. I will say, my love of sci-fi early in life is all movies and TV.
Like what?
I mean, just you know, I mean For me, I was more of a Star Trek person than a Star Wars.
Star Wars had 3 movies.
You know, Contact is a huge favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm super dyslexic, and so I was never a reader as a kid. And just recently, I earned like probably 5 years ago or something, I discovered audiobooks, and it's been like this transformative moment for me. And so I've been like going on morning walks, and I'm like burning through every sci-fi that I always like wanted to, like, I owned the books, I wanted to get into them, like you know, like I just, you know, went through the first 6 Dune books for the first time in my life, and it was like,
that's a fucking accomplishment, man.
It was awesome.
How many pizzas is that?
Yeah.
There used to be a Pizza Hut program where if you read enough books, they give you a pizza, guys. It's old man corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so then.
Yeah, so I'm really playing catch up with my reading right now.
Did you no Aldous Huxley? Brave New World?
Oh, I've done Brave New World.
That is like the darkest book.
You know, but even that one, it's like Brave New World and what's his other one that I love? I can't remember. The other book he's famous for.
I forget.
Yeah. Doors of Perception.
Yeah.
You know, both of those I read, but, you know, and same with 1984. It's like, they're huge holes because it was like my reading. It's not necessarily reading comprehension, but it's like
the effort. Yeah, I'm dyslexic too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like for me, I never had that kind of transportation into the world.
Until you had the audio tapes.
Until I had the audio. Yeah, until I had audiobooks.
Well, there's a really, really good first season of The Brave New World on Peacock. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, we watched that. That was really
dirty
good.
Too, and it was really good. It was like sex everywhere.
Yeah.
But that was like, I mean, are you familiar with Grant Morrison as a comic book writer at all? He did The Invisibles. He's done some Batman runs. He's he did the Action Comics for a while. He's one of those guys that is into like ritual magic. He's a chaos magician. So but like a lot of the stuff that he does borders a little bit on perception trickery kind of stuff, where you're like, you think that something's going some way, and then you realize, and he completely shifts your perspective on some stuff. I would say he's like Alan Moore-ian in that tradition of like, fucking weirdos that have like really deep things to say because they like explore the depths of their heads. But let's see, what movies? I mean, Alien was so good. But
this is a really great one. Alien, the first Alien was actually one of the main inspirations for The Expanse.
Oh, really?
But it's specifically the first two people that get killed, which are like the two like maintenance people. And I read I think it was on a podcast with the writers of The Expanse, and they were talking about those two characters, and it was really like the first time in science fiction that you kind of see the working class.
Yeah, that's cool. I never thought about that.
Yeah, and it never occurred to me, and I had to go back and rewatch it. And I was like, oh my god, that's
just that. That's the first one, right? Her in the mech suit. That mech suit is just that's the second one.
That's the second one. The first one was just on the ship.
It's a little bit more horror movie.
Yeah, it's a little more horror movie, and they just kind of go through the crew killing everyone, but it's like. Yeah, there are all these conversations in it with these two characters, where they're just like griping about pay and like it, this, having to take this detour to land on this planet is like all about like them losing their bonus and like, there are all these like working class concerns that are like, that are addressed by these two people that it's like you so rarely see in.
Have you ever seen? There's an anime. I read the manga first, but it's called Planetes, and it is like it's in the future, and there are again a working class group of garbage people, or waste management people that orbit the planet and collect space trash, and it starts with one person. Who, like, one of the characters has like a loved one who dies because a little piece of trash, like itty bitty, like the size of a grain of sand, rips in through her spaceship because all that trash that's going. I think it's it's not Kessler, but it starts with a K. It's a thing that like a theory or whatever, a syndrome.
Yeah,
it's not a syndrome because I think that's medical, but all the space garbage that's like.
Yeah,
and it's gonna eventually like make it so that we can't like leave the planet, right? Because of the danger. So basically, what they do is they collect all of this before it collides with other stuff, and it's a similar thing. Like I wonder if that's like a whole subgenre of like that kind of thing. I mean, I guess Alien is a little bit different because it's like they're just. I mean, is she? What's her role?
It is totally the same because it's also the ship is is owned by a corporation, so everything is dictated by what the corporation wants. And then the second movie, Aliens, they get sent back to the planet because the corporation is interested in weaponizing this thing, and it's.
The 80s knew what the corporation was up to. That's crazy.
Totally.
I'm like thinking back. I'm like realizing how much of my training comes from that culture. And now I see the movies that are coming out, and they're so overtly like political. Whereas like this stuff is a little bit more subtle,
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Moon with what's his name? Sam Rockwell. That is a fucked up movie about this theme, where it's a guy who realizes that he's dying because he gets exposed to, like, anyway, basically the main premise, I don't even want to spoil it.
Okay.
But the
I'll
movie,
check it
but
out.
it's definitely worth checking out, and it is corporations doing shady shit where it's like hidden, and part of it is uncovering it,
Yeah.
which is fun. And like Sam Rockwell is awesome. But yeah, I the whole genre is it is an interesting, expansive thing. I'm surprised, like, what is, I guess I'm thinking like young adult, it would be the what's it called, Hunger Games.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's there's so many things that fall into that category. I'm okay on Hunger Games. Like, I don't think I could have read it. It definitely wasn't made for me. I'm happy to acknowledge that.
I will admit that I did listen to the books. It was actually, I think
it had its moments.
it had its moments, but like I also did it right after, I think, The Expanse, and The Expanse is very much not a young adult thing. It's it's very much an adult oriented thing, and so it was a little like hard to get. I was like, oh, this is only like 10 hours long, or like, or it's like every Expanse book is like, audiobook is like 20 hours long or something. So it's like, oh, this is a little short. And
Damn, people complain about my episodes being long. No, they don't. But I talked to a kid the other day, and I was like, I have a 3-hour interview of this person, that Camilla Taylor, and she was like, you didn't edit it? And I was like, have you not heard of podcasts? But yeah. That's interesting. I've never gotten into the audiobook space. I'd listen to a lot of podcasts though, so I could get it. So where did you grow up? What was your background?
I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Which, if you're not familiar, is like the kind of hippie enclave of the Midwest.
Okay.
To total hippie parents.
And are they immigrants, or have you guys been there for a while? Novak doesn't sound like the typical Smith American name.
Yeah, I think my dad's side, I think I would be third generation.
Third generation.
Yeah, I think my mom's side too would be third generation. Yeah, so it's all Northern European, Swedish, Polish, Norwegian. My last name is Polish. It's my whole name is a weird, like, total kind of butchery of many different things, because there was apparently some sort of falling out between my grandfather and great grandfather. So Novak in Polish is spelled Nowak, and my grandfather changed the spelling of his last name to distance himself, kind of butchered version through family drama of
not even Ellis Island.
no.
Just bitter name change.
just some, and no one in the family knows what it is.
I'm gonna give your dad the benefit of the doubt, just based on how parents used to be. Each generation, the parents are a little harder.
Yeah.
So
well, it was grandfather to great grandfather, but I don't remember that grandfather, but I know that he was loved. Like, he was my dad, and both my parents loved him. So I'm definitely taking his side too. So I'm happy to have the V Novak. And then my God, I feel like I really lucked out with first names of Yann, because the other two choices were Sven and Thor. So I'm happy with Yann.
I could see you as a Thor. You got Thor vibes.
Yeah.
And then how do you balance, what would you say you balance out your music and because you're an artist and a composer.
Yeah.
And most of your stuff, so we've got some paintings in the background, and stuff like that, but you also do video stuff, you said?
Yeah, so,
you do animations with like After Effects?
Yeah. I mean, it's all of the visual work. I mean, I used to identify as a sound artist, which I've kind of moved away from.
And that's distinct for people that are listening from a noise artist, which is a much more obnoxious thing. Yeah. I mean, I love it, but it's still obnoxious.
Yeah. I mean, basically sound art was, 10, 15 years ago, the thing you would say to be allowed into the, quote unquote visual art world and work with sound. Yeah. That's how you had to frame yourself.
Was it sculptural as well in that, like, I've seen like that take on a speaker as a sculpture?
Yeah, sometimes it would, but I mean, really there was this real, I kind of came up at this time when the art world was really phobic towards sound stuff. And so it was really, and now it feels very in vogue right now. But I've also I've become really tired of those distinctions and rules, and kind of become a little resentful of them. And so now that's why I
did pick up some resentment.
That's how I've kind of moved towards just, calling myself an artist and a composer. And my artwork does involve sound. It involves video or light, or, it generally tends to, when I'm working in the visual art space, it's about creating kind of atmosphere or a space. And so I'll use video, but the video is generally kind of like color field work. I mean, the piece behind you, those are all, those are actually four, those are, acoustic panels. So they're, they're actually for treating a studio. And I had them covered in different color fabric, that each of those colors in that sequence were the video in another room for the same exhibition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you actually compose music that's just like music? I mean, not necessarily like pop, but is it what genre do you bounce around? Are you in a specific space?
Again, a little resentment. The closest word is ambient.
Okay, but it's like, you don't have to subdivide it, but it's electronic, right? Like
it's all electronic music.
You play with synths and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's all computer generated.
But it's ambient as opposed to like synthwave and stuff like that, or anything more poppy.
Yeah, and I adopted using the term because it's electronic music without a beat for the most part.
Yeah.
Or without rhythm. So it's
so no rhythm. No, because even some ambient music does have like
Yeah. So it's kind of dronier, but still.
So you're not in the Mono Lake Robert Henke space, not in the Orb. You're farther out into like maybe more gas.
Yeah. I opened for Robert Henke.
Yeah. It's adjacent, but his is definitely more rhythmic, even though it's like just a beat going.
Yeah. But he did a great
he's part of the Ableton team. He's a fucking G.
Yeah, he's awesome. That show I performed with him was one of my favorite moments in performing, and it was
he got into the Orb, like you don't just get into the Orb.
Yeah.
and they're like, here, you're the Orb now.
Yeah. I played it in 2007. I opened for him, and it was actually, he was doing a totally droney piece then called the Buddha Machine, which I won't go into the piece he did, but it was such a great show in this festival in Montreal, and
we just keep getting even more niche.
Totally.
I'm like, oh, this guy knows who Gas is. Nobody knows who Gas is.
But it was one of my favorite moments because it was in this art space that is like a big warehouse with a bar in it.
That was here in LA?
No, in Montreal.
Montreal.
And they were supposed to close the bar for the performances. And me and my collaborator were like the newbies, and like, you know, I had never performed a big festival, or it was like the second time I'd done a big festival like that. And they left the bar open for our performance. It was just like, you know, really kind of
noisy,
minimal, droney piece. Yeah. It was 8-channel surround, and everyone's like laying on the floor, and then there's like glasses clinking and clattering and stuff. And we just kind of like powered through, played a little louder, you know, whatever. And Robert Henke comes on and like starts this like beautiful drone. It's like 8-channel surround, like you're just like enveloped in sound. And like 10 minutes into the set, he just like slams all the faders down and like waves his fist at the bar. And he's like, "What the fuck? You were supposed to stop serving booze and like shut the fuck up," or so, you know, like something like that. And then he just slams all the faders back up. And it was like the bar was silent the rest of the performance. Like everyone that was getting drinks, like just like scattered like roaches. It was so funny.
Yeah. And probably with a German accent, right?
Oh yeah. Total German accent. And he's such a like mild mannered, yeah. Like his demeanor is not the one that would yell, you know?
No,
like,
definitely.
You know, I think he was like wearing like one of those like bucket fishing hat thing, you know. It's like,
I used to listen to his shit nonstop, like just on my headphones. I would go for walks when I was living in Italy, and it was like I would go on hikes. My teacher was like upset at me that we went on a hike to like where they carve Murano or marble right out of the mountains, and he was like, "Why aren't you take your headphones off and take in the sounds?" And I took the headphones off, and I was like, it was like a bunch of like Valley Girl types going like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "No, I'm gonna listen to Robert Henke."
Yeah,
that was Monolith at the time. But yeah, and then I remember trying to show someone that stuff, and it was like somebody that was probably listening to John Denver, like some Southern boy, and he was like, "Oh, cool, techno." It's like not having it. I was like in my own world with it, just this like really, really great, like it's like soundtrack music, you know.
Oh yeah,
and it gets you hyped up. I love his stuff. Yeah, I really
he's great.
I'm just glad that I had someone I could talk to about Robert Henke on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. No, but that's really impressive. I mean, congrats on opening for him. I would have just pissed my pants. I mean, not that I do any live performance or anything like that, but cool, man. Well, anything that I haven't asked you about that maybe you wanted to talk about that I've left out? I don't always have all the questions, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the people sometimes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of where we could go from there.
I mean, we've been at an hour, so we're wrapping up. I'm just cool. Asking you one last question on the way out. I'm not like trying to grind out on more. You know, sometimes it goes long. Sometimes it feels like it can go long, but I feel like we've tapped it out. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it feels good. It's.
We've gotten a sense of you and what you're into. What was like? Do any with dyslexia? You never got any like training with that or any special assistance with it?
No, I mean I went to. You know, it was growing up in the Midwest, so it was like, you know, and also it was like the 80s and 90s. So I did go to an alternative high school, like it starting in my sophomore year, but it was like alternative high school in.
Well, if you do that later for high school, by then all the people that haven't had their ADD, like their issues helped, are all fucking delinquents or drug addicts because that's how they cope.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and I'm talking about myself too.
and I was as well. Yeah. And then you go to the alternative high school was a fantastic place. I mean, it was absolutely amazing experience, but it was like, you know, people that had been kicked out of their houses, people that had kids early, you know, people that couldn't, you know, that were queer and couldn't deal with the larger high school, like the bullying. So it was like everyone that had a problem.
That probably arose from, I mean, or was somehow related to the frustration. Because if you, like, I remember thinking I was dumb. I remember just straight up thinking, because you can't keep up with everybody else. and it's a really difficult thing. And I think that a lot of people, like, if you can't succeed at school and you're failing, what's left? Be cool. And just party with the cool kids.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I maybe have said this before, but the first person that ever got me high at Epcot Center and is in prison for murdering someone. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's always nice to finally have time. Oh, it's great to have you. It's always nice to actually meet the people that are, because I have friends that I've had, and until I have them on the show, I don't really know them, And like sometimes people are like, "Oh, I didn't know that about this person." So hopefully we'll enlighten people that you know about you and your love of sci-fi and how different, like, because learning disabilities are tough, man. Yeah. And they're definitely not adequately handled in this country.
Yeah, and anywhere. I'm also partially colorblind, so that also
really
throws another. Yeah, I mean that's
why you're a sound artist.
Yeah. I mean, they all of them stem. Kind of the synthesis of it all is that I can't trust that my perception of the world is what the rest of which is again a common sci-fi theme. But it's I've become more and more kind of interested in that because it's like so many people experience it and just don't talk about it.
And we're neurodivergent, which is like there with autism. It's like it's one of those things where it's not the same as autism, but it's in the Venn diagram. There's a bigger thing that we both fall under.
Exactly.
Which is interesting. I didn't even know that until like this year.
Right.
Or last year. But it's like, and it is one of those things where people are like, "What's it like?" And you can't really say because you don't know. You don't have any point of reference.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, at least for me, how it present, like how it's described too, is so lacking. Like I remember like being taught what it was in school and it being described as like, oh, you'll like people see things backwards. And it's like, no, I don't, it's not that I see things backwards. It's like, what I experience on the page is not what's actually there. But
how are you with numbers, with like long strings of numbers?
Numbers are not that.
I cannot, like, my ex used to think it was like she would watch me like I was doing a trick where I would look at the number and I would just get it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that what it speaks to is that it is a coding issue. Like you are having a difficult time taking visual information and coding it into phonetic information.
Yeah. Because for me, what it was I was homeschooled for kindergarten and first grade, and so I wasn't like in a proper classroom until second grade.
That either really helped you because you had extra attention, or kind of hindered you. Which one was it?
It totally hindered me.
Okay.
It totally hindered me because of the like it totally did, like
your mom wasn't trained to deal with.
No, interestingly, my mother was her degree was in education, English and history.
But that's different than,
and my father,
special education, though.
Yeah. But she actually did go into special education and did teach special ed for 10 years. But she was working with cognitively disabled people. But yeah, it was, for me, it was like the moment I remember it was being unable to read out loud in second grade, and like being put on the spot, having the spotlight on me. I also deal with anxiety, and like I had like test anxiety is what was another diagnosis I got. But it was like, for me, how it presents is I see the wrong word. Okay. Like it's not that I'm, seeing letters mixed up. It's like I'm seeing, it's just like if words have,
if they're too similar,
if they share 3 or 4 letters, they can just be interchangeable. And I'll read it out loud, and I'm like, wow, that doesn't make sense, and I have to like go back and be like, oh no, that word is actually this, no matter how much I see it as something else.
Yeah, no, well, the example that I always give people is that left and felt are not the same, are not mirror image words of each other, but they get confused all the time because they have essentially the same elements. It's the same letters in a different arrangement.
Yeah.
So it's not reverse, it's not mirror image. But yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle. I wish we had figured that out a little sooner. Or I wish we had gotten into a little bit sooner. But I feel like I don't know. I feel like that's like its whole episode. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah. I
like
mean, I'm trying to push my whole practice in that direction of like really digging into it now. You know, I mean, it's like it's even like why I like to consider myself a composer and not a musician, for instance, is like because I'm better at like arranging the big things in space, but it's like
but not the performing.
Yeah, and like I can't read music. I have a hard time even like.
How do you do the live performances? So it's just Ableton Live, right?
Yeah.
So you're just playing it like, but are you doing live synths or anything, or are you doing sequencing?
It's more about like everything, all the like basic elements are already rendered, and it's like how they're
Performed,
yeah,
like
how
with the
they're
Ableton,
sequenced, and like how, when things are triggered and how they overlap. And
so you struggled with stuff like Logic a little bit, maybe more than the Ableton is just so intuitive for that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
yeah,
it's literally designed so that you can perform your music live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where for me it was like before that I tried Cubase, and it was like it was so brutal.
And Cakewalk, Cubase and Cakewalk I've had since like I was 15. Yeah. And I've used them, and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Reason was where it finally clicked. In the early 2000s, 2002, I started using Reason, and that's when I was like, whoa, this is fun. And then Ableton, that's it. Like Ableton, I can sketch out an idea in Ableton so fast that it's embarrassing that I don't make more music. It's just not my top priority. But every time I get on that thing, I'm like, okay, here's the bass line, here's the thing. Yeah,
it's so great. Yeah,
it's like everything is right here. You don't even have to look at the screen most of the time. So get an Ableton Push, and then Ableton Push pay us.
Yeah.
All right, man. Anything else? Anything that we can promote for you? Any shows coming up?
Yeah.
It might not come out in time to promote it, but we like to let people know you're doing stuff.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Everything is really far out. So I have a new album coming out that I'm really excited about that actually is exactly about my dyslexia and colorblindness, and this kind of I haven't quite figured out how to talk about it yet, but this discontinuity in perception.
I interview artists. I'm familiar with that concept.
Yeah. And then I'll be performing it in the end of March 31st at a festival in Brisbane, called the Ohm Festival at the Brisbane Powerhouse.
Cool, man. And how much of this gear is going? Just the laptop and the Ableton, or are you taking it the OP1?
Just the laptop.
What's the Peak? That's the Novation Peak. Is that a circuit?
It's a
synth.
Synth, yeah. It's a really cool digital.
Nice. And then what's the Roland thing you got there?
TR-09.
09.
Yeah. So
nice.
just starting to the new record has a few beats on it. It's the first time in like 15 years.
Jesus, how much is? I mean, this is gauche to ask, but that's like a very expensive Apollo.
Oh yeah.
Your interface must have the best preamps out of anybody I know for that fucking rack. Wow, how many inputs? Or is that? Oh no,
it's the 8.
That's the 8.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's that thing on top?
That's just patch bay.
That's a patch bay for. Do you have your rec? Because you have like a whole bunch of patches.
No, my partner does behind.
Oh, that's where I didn't see it. It's behind the Pikachu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got into Eurorack, and I kind of got out of it.
Because it's like a fucking.
Yeah, so I literally have one module.
You could buy a car.
Yeah. I still have one module behind me that I have no idea what it does. It's called the something like quad temporal shifter or something. It does something with CV that I don't understand. I kept it because it has one digital noise out. And I love this digital noise it creates, and so I like literally kept it in a little case.
And that's a Moog and a what?
Two
Moogs.
Two Moogs.
Is that like kind of like the matriarch branding on the one on the right?
This was actually my partner got for me for as a gift. This is so.
You know what?
Edition.
We should end the show because this is not even going to be in here. Okay. I'm just going to cut it out because we're not even looking at it. I'm just more curious for myself, cool. And then I'm going to look at this pedal board behind me.
Okay.
Oh, that Univibe looks nice. That Chase Bliss. All right. Anyway, thank you guys for checking out the show. What's your Instagram?
Just at Yann Novak.
Okay, at Yann Novak. And thank you for checking out the show. We'll be back next week with another guest, with another topic that may or may not be art related. That's how we roll around here. And thanks for watching.